Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you the difference in quality of cut when it comes to ripping and cross-cutting sheet goods with a standard circular saw and then also with a track saw using the appropriate track. What we have here on this side is a tool that I've had for a little over a year and a half. It has become one of my most used tools in the shop, and I haven't done any videos on it yet, but there'll definitely be a little bit of a series coming out on it soon. But given that my primary use case with woodworking is in cabinetry and closet built-ins, this has seen a ton of use and it's a saw that I absolutely love. This is the DEWALT cordless FlexVolt DCS520. I think it's called the T1 kit, which comes with the charger, the 6 amp hour FlexVolt battery, and the 59-inch track. This retails for, I think, between $580 and $680 US for the kit, and just under $400 for the bare tool. And in Canada, it's $850 for the kit and around $500 for the bare tool. I'll put links in the description below to buy both of these if you're so interested. Then over here, we have the DEWALT DWE575. This is a 7¼ inch corded circular saw. And I actually borrowed this one from my neighbor, who is one of the biggest fans of Mason Woodshop, and I'd like everybody to know that he finally broke 100, so he came over last week talking about the 99 that he shot at the local golf course, so congratulations on that. So anyways, yeah, was able to borrow this from him, and I'll be using this in a couple of videos coming up. But we're gonna put these both so we're gonna put down a sheet of plywood and do some cross cuts and some rip cuts, and then analyze the quality of the cut that we can get from them. So we have used blades in these, so these are not fresh blades, but they're both probably right in the middle of their life. So I think that's going to be a relatively fair comparison with that. Again, your mileage may vary. I think we're using 5 1/8 inch ACX plywood, so that I've had some scraps laying around, so we're going to use that. But let's open up the garage, get out there. There may be a little bit of noise in the neighborhood. It's a Saturday, so everybody's out cutting their grass and making a lot of noise. But let's go take a look at these cuts. All right, so we're gonna be starting with the rip cut with the circular saw on the straight edge. And then we're going to be putting down the track, doing the same with the track saw. And then we'll move over and I'll do the cross cuts. And I'll label them with a Sharpie as we go so that we can then jump back in the shop and take a look. All right, so we have our cuts made, and you'll see that I am marking the outer and inner, and that's because the track saw has that advantage of having that rubber strip laid down on the piece. And I wasn't trying to do any sort of hacks with having tape down or a sheet of 1/8 inch hardboard or anything like that. You can do things like that to get a cleaner cut from a circular saw, but here we have our rip cut. So you'll see the grain running this way, and if we look at the outer cut, so you'll see that there is quite a bit of, I don't even know what you call it, like I guess tear out along the cut there and a little bit at the end as well. So that is the outer part of the blade, and the inner for the circular saw really isn't that different. Again, there's nothing protecting either the outer or the inner. So those two cuts, the outer and the inner for the circular saw, are essentially the same. So you see a little decent amount of that tear out. Then if we look at the track saw, so let's look at the outer part of the track saw, and it's pretty clean. So again, this is where it's just the blade. It's not being held down by the rubber. It's the inner part that's being held down by the rubber. So surprisingly clean. You still get that tear out at the end, but just pretty much the same as the circular saw. But overall, this cut is significantly cleaner, even though it did not have support. So could be the blade in that case. Yeah. So anyways, there's the outer part of the track, and then the inner part of the track saw is even cleaner. And hopefully that comes up here. So a little bit better than the outer part. Again, this is where the rubber was running across. So again, for these rip cuts, the track saw is significantly better, both on the inner and the outer pieces. So anyways, let's take a look at the cross cut. All right, so here we have our cross cuts, and this is significantly different than the rip cut. So let's take a look at the outer part of the circular saw, and just to show you, the inner part is about the same, so I'm not gonna go over that. But the outer and inner, significant tear out along the cut, like very, very significant. And when I have used saws like this on finer plywood, so whether it's like birch or maple plywood, it's not quite as bad as this ACX. But you see just like absolutely ripped apart. Like you could not use this. So I know for rip cuts, you would generally be doing that with the miter saw if you're doing shelves, and you can definitely get some cleaner cuts if you put tape over it or sacrificial board. But anyways, the outer and inner for the circular saw just absolutely ripped apart. Now let's take a look at the track saw, and it's a little bit better, but not that much. So the cut itself along the edge is a lot better, but there's still significant tear out. And you can probably see the comparison here. Again, this is the outer part of the track. And so it's probably about half to 2/3 of the same tear out as the circular saw. So the track saw doesn't have as big advantage on the outer piece, but where it does differ is with the inner cut. And here you'll see, like, other than a little bit of fuzzy on there that can easily be sanded away, there's very little tear out with the inner. Not quite as good as the rip cut, but a lot better. And let's just compare apples to apples. A lot better than the inner cut with the circular saw. And this is generally what I have found with rip cuts on plywood with the track saw, is as long as you position it so you can have a kind of that sacrificial piece in between, not on top. We're not trying to eliminate tear out, but if you can essentially work from both ends of the sheet of plywood, so that the rubber strip is essentially always covering the side that you're actually going to keep or have on your keeper piece, then you can manage really well with the track saw. So you do get a little bit of waste, but you can get very clean results. And again, this tear out is minimal compared to the circular saw, still a little bit much for me, but again, the ACX plywood will exaggerate that tear out. So yeah, so there we go. Definitely a big difference when it comes to the rip cut versus the cross cut.
All right, so there you have it. And when it came to the rip cut, the track saw had a little bit of an advantage, but that advantage could easily be taken away if you put down a piece of painter's tape and use that with the circular saw. I'm pretty confident you could probably get almost as clean a cut with the circular saw in that case. But when it came to the crosscut, totally different story. The outer edge of the track saw was almost as bad as the circular saw, which did quite the number on this ACX plywood. But when it came to the edge where the rubber from the track was covering it and helping to reduce that tear out, we had a much cleaner cut. And when I'm working with a piece of sheet goods and I am making those cross cuts with the track saw, I will essentially come at it from both ends so that I'm always saving that one edge to be used on my completed piece. So you can definitely get much better results when it comes to those cross cuts with the track saw versus the circular saw. Even using tape, you're not going to get too much of an improvement. If you do use 1/8 inch hardboard or something along those lines, you can get a better cut out of the circular saw, but still not quite something that would be cabinet grade. So overall, the circular saw has its time and place for sure. It's a much more versatile saw for a lot of other jobs, but for my use case, the track saw is definitely the winner. And you'll notice in that video that I was not using the dust extraction. When I do have dust extraction hooked up to this, it collects probably 95% plus of the dust, and that is with the Festool CT MIDI. So
the dust collection on this alone versus the circular saw. It's been a while since I've used a straight up circular saw, so I was definitely a little surprised by the amount of dust that it kicks out all over the place. So the track saw, even without dust extraction, focuses the dust coming out the one end, and you can just hook up a shop vac to that pretty easily and capture that. But with the dust extractor, it's even better. So for my use case, the track saw is the definite winner. But for the majority of homeowners, is the cost worth it? No. Like, you're dealing with 4 to 5 times the cost for this system with the track versus a circular saw with, I think, a $30 straight edge. So much more economical to go this end. You can still get really good quality rip cuts out of the circular saw, and then just use a different tool for those cross cuts. So anyways, thanks for watching. I will definitely have more videos on the track saw coming up. Let me know in the comments below what you think about the track saw versus circular saw, and what you would like me to cover on the track saw. Thanks for watching, and see you in another video soon.